Okay, we're gonna get started today. So thanks everyone for joining. My name is Jennifer Thisname. For those of you who I haven't seen before or interacted with before, I am a career advisor here in the School of Chemical Sciences. So I'm excited to kick off our first panel for Graduate Careers Exploration Week. So my role today is just to facilitate our conversation. This panel is for you students and postdocs who are attending to ask any questions to our panelists about their, about their career trajectory, about the field, about the company in general. So I want you all to lead our conversation. I'm just gonna be hanging out here facilitating your questions. So if you do have any questions, just kind of some housekeeping notes. Feel free to either unmute yourself, ask any questions that way. You can also use the reaction tab or reaction button in the bottom to raise your hand and ask a question. But again, this is a networking session, so please, if possible, if you're able to, turn on your cameras, interact with our panelists here. This is a chance for you to get to know from them, hear about their career path and journey. And I will turn it to you all to lead the conversation. So I'm going to just first start off by turning it over to our alumni to introduce themselves, which lab they were in when they were here at Illinois, also talking a little bit about their current position, current company they're at. So Jacob, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
All right, will do. Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, so Jacob Turner. I graduated my PhD back in the summer of 2021, so not that long ago, about a year and a half. I was a member of Kathy Murphy's group, where my research was largely on synthesis and surface interactions of colloidal inorganic nanoparticles. Since that time in 2021, I joined Henkel Corporation. I don't know if that's one everyone is super familiar with. It's actually a German-based company. We have a little over 50,000 employees, and we're one of the leaders in adhesives. And then we also have some laundry and home care type of business units as well. And in this role, I'm sort of in my second role now, after being here about a year and a half. I'm a product development chemist. So I lead a few different projects in our automotive components business, where my focus is on e-mobility. So we do a bunch of different adhesives and coatings for electric vehicles, and I lead those product development projects.
Okay, I guess I'll go ahead and introduce myself. Hi everyone, I'm Ephraim Morado, and I used to work for Dr. Steven Zimmerman back when I was in Illinois, and I mainly worked on degradable polymers, so specifically making degradable polyurethanes for making them more sustainable for material upcycling. And after graduating from UIUC, I was able to work for Dow Chemical as a senior research specialist, and I'm in the coating business, and I mainly work on metal coatings and traffic paint. And I'm currently leading the synthesis part of those projects.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction. Now I am going to turn it over to our participants. If you have any questions at all, again, as I said, feel free to either use the reactions button in the bottom or unmute yourself and ask away. But before, I guess, anyone thinks of questions, I just wanted to start off by asking, can you tell us a little bit about your transition from working in an academic lab to now working in industry? How has that transition sort of been like? Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
I can start. Yeah, it wasn't that bad actually. So I said I was in my second role here. I actually started as part of a rotational program, where I got to basically be an R&D scientist through multiple different business units. That was pretty helpful in my transition, because in that rotational program, it's sort of much more technical based, I guess, and a little more like academia, where you're sort of given your own projects. It's sort of all on you a little bit. And then I did that for about a year. And then in the last 6 months or so, I've transitioned into a more of a permanent role within a business, which has had a bigger learning curve, because now I'm interacting with customers on a daily basis, interacting with all of our different, purchasing, marketing teams. So now my role, I would say, has a little bit of a learning curve outside of being in the lab, and I spend probably less and less time in the lab now. But yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I would say that Illinois prepared me pretty well, and then Henkel has done a good job of the onboarding process. That it was a relatively smooth transition for me.
Yeah, so for my transition, in Steve's lab, I used to do a lot of synthesis and making materials. And with those synthesis, as you all probably know, is a lot of columns. And most of my graduate career was probably in front of a column or some type of column-like thing. And it was nice when I switch over to heavy material like job in Dow, preparing polymers instead of um, of columns. Actually, when I interviewed with Dow, my manager, who was interviewing me, asked me what I liked least about grad school, and I said columns, and she said, "Luckily, we don't do columns here. We do filtrations." And I was like, "Where do I sign?" Um, so the transition is really different for me, just because as a synthetic chemist, you have to work a lot in the lab, and of course you're trying to get papers out and whatnot. But when you when I switched over to Dow, definitely the work-life balance was a lot better. And for instance, I don't have to work on the weekends. Uh, no one questions me if I'm sick and I need to take time off or anything like that. So I feel like that transition for me uh was really nice. And yeah.
Yes, not working during the weekends, right? Awesome.
Oh yeah.
Okay, participants, what questions do you all have? Rachel.
Hi, yeah, thank you guys so much for being here and answering all of our questions. I have a bit of a basic question, but could you describe how you each went about finding the role that you're now in?
Yeah, so to find the role I'm now in, I guess it was probably within about 6 months of defending my thesis. I defended in June, and sort of, yeah, the 6 to 7 months before that, I really just started to look for jobs at that point. So I was using a lot of the job search, engines, Indeed, and then what is the Handshake, where those were being posted. And around that same time frame was when it was that fall. There was all those career function fairs and things happening, and we'd have 3M and Dow and places was come. So I was attending all of those. And then my situation was slightly unique, and I was really looking to get back to Michigan. So I had a pretty narrow window in terms of what I was looking for. But I did have a few contacts within the state of Michigan, mostly that worked at Dow actually. And because I had previously worked there as a co-op during undergrad. So that sort of narrowed my focus to start applying to different chemical companies that were really, had significant R&D sites in the state of Michigan, Henkel being one of them. So once I did that, I applied, to these handful of companies, interviewed for them, and I felt like Henkel was the best fit. But yeah, largely I used all the online tools, to see what jobs were posted, and then reached out to a few of my key contacts that I had, around the industry.
Yeah, for me, it was mainly through on-campus recruitment. I remember I applied a year before I was supposed to graduate, and I mean, which I didn't know because of COVID and all, but so I kind of got like a practice run at it the first time. And then the second time, I kind of knew all the things I had to do during these on-campus recruitment. And I think the best advice I would give someone trying to look for a job right now is talk to the career center like as early as you can, because I felt like I didn't do that. And when I did talk to like Jennifer, for instance, then the ball really started to roll a lot smoother. For instance, like getting your resumes checked, practicing interviews. I felt like that was something I missed during the first time I applied through on-campus recruiting.
Thank you both.
Yeah, I would second that. If you think you're too early to start that process, you're not. I don't think you can be too early.
Yeah, great advice. I remember it yesterday doing appointments with you all, doing career advising, mock interviews, all of that. So yes, using SCS Career Services, but also as Jacob mentioned, right, using your network. So if you know someone who's at a company, or if you previously had interacted with them before, definitely reaching out when you're actually, or when you're close to graduation, so that you can use those networks as well. Great.
Also, I want to add that, networking now within your department is also important. I remember that the people that interviewed me during my on-campus recruitment through Dow was like my mentor when I entered grad school. So, really having a good bridge towards that is would be helpful and important. And also reaching out to them to do like a summer internship and whatnot would be really helpful as well if the company offers it.
Exactly, great advice. If you start early, chances are a lot of the times the recruiters come back to do either information sessions or at the career fair. So if you go and talk to them early on, it's likely they're gonna even remember you when they come back. So absolutely. What other questions do we have? Yes, go ahead.
Oh, hi. First of all, thanks to both of you for taking out time to answer our questions. I had one question regarding like many job postings don't necessarily indicate like what specialization that they are looking for, right? Especially some companies when they come for campus recruitment. So how do you, so first, the first interview basically contains like the 15-minute presentation and things like that, right? So how should one go on about like preparing for that presentation? Because like it's about like talking about your research, but it should mainly be about like relating it to the company, right? Like how the company can use your research or how it can be used in industry. So yeah, like how would one go on about it if if things are not mentioned like too specifically?
Yeah, so I'll comment on that from my side, and speaking for a little bit on Henkel's side. A lot of it depends. There are times when we submit sort of a job posting out there where we are looking for a very specialized skill set. And we are looking for somebody with, unique experience. But a lot of the times we're really just looking for good scientists. And it isn't so much about what you've done in your background. So if you're seeing a little bit more of a vague posting like that, I would guess that that's probably more of what the company, they don't care too much about the exact experience that you have. They just want to know that you can do independent research well and show off your problem solving skills and sort of regardless. So from my example, I was doing colloidal inorganic nanoparticle synthesis and different surface characterization, and I definitely don't use a TEM anymore. Now that I work here, I don't work with nanomaterials very often. I'm actually more on the batteries and electrochemistry side, which I didn't do anything of in graduate school. So yeah, you have to, I think you'll see, like, once you leave, you're a lot better at learning things than you were when you first started graduate school. So you get up to speed a lot faster. So yeah, from a presentation side, if it does appear vague like that, I wouldn't necessarily get caught up too much as to, trying to, find this perfect niche inside the company. I would just display your problem solving skills, and, anytime you can show a unique challenge you encountered and how you solve that, I think you'll do really well for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree that most of the time we're just looking for a good scientist. During your presentation, I would really focus on showcasing like your creativity, problem solving skills. And unlike academia, industry is a very collaborative environment. Um, so you kind of want to show examples on how you were collaborative as a graduate student with certain projects. And also something that not a lot of people think about during these interviews is probably also showcasing your mentorship. So if you've mentored like undergraduates or grad students, that's a big plus for industry as well, because they want someone that will be able to train the next workforce.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Great. So I had another question in the chat actually. And the question was, what criteria did you have for a job or when you were choosing this industry that you wanted to pursue for your career? And how did you develop that criteria?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess my criteria was location was actually a big one. My fiance is a pharmacist. Every state we work in, she has to be licensed and pass exams in those states. So she was already licensed in Michigan. That was a big benefit for me. And then really the other criteria I had was I wanted to keep doing research. So within industry, the few other opportunities that I had and were considering, they were either a little too far away from research or it was more analytical based where I didn't want to be like that specialized. I wanted to be able to, do research in a wide variety of areas, sort of like Kathy allowed me to do in graduate school. So that was really, I would say, where I set my criteria. And then from there, it was, depending on the opportunities, looking at the, individual companies and then what that offer actually looks like and figuring out, well, what makes sense for you.
Yeah. If I'm being real, like in terms of criteria, I was just thinking that if I could do polymer chemistry, I'd be happy anywhere. But at the same time, I really just wanted to finish my graduate school and get out of there and start my career. Um, So in terms of location and company, I didn't really have that, that checkpoints. It's more like, are they doing something that I could be interested on, for the next, I don't know, decade or 30 years if I plan to stay in that company? And am I really going to enjoy it? And is it something that I'll be passionate about? Um, and yeah, so it just so happens that everything lined up, and I'm doing like polymer chemistry with application, and then I'm on the business side, so I'm always trying to I guess satisfy the customer, which is a big um, I guess thing for me, because back in graduate school, a lot of the research that we did was, basic principles, and I really struggled with finding the point of doing the certain research that we were doing. So I felt like that's what keeps me going uh, in what I do now.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that. What other questions do we have for our panelists? So another question in the chat, how has it been like for you having to integrate customer service skills into your careers? Ephraim, you mentioned you do work on the business side, so you probably have that experience. I don't know about Jacob, so could you please expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, for us, it's more like we get I work with paints basically. So we basically get a customer, and then they tell us what properties they need with a certain coating or paints. And then, but the R&D never really is never really customer facing. So if you want to be on the science side, you don't really need to, I guess, interact with the customer. And of course, they don't want RN to like interact with the customer, because then stuff might slip, to be honest. So I feel like the biggest transition for me is in graduate school. Most of the experiments that I'm doing is mostly just to figure out like a question that I found in the literature or whatnot. But then this one is, I would say, a little bit more pressure, because in its own way, because you're trying to meet customer demand.
Yeah, and so here at Henkel, we actually call ourselves product development, not research and development. We do our research, but it always is in the intent of being able to sell a product, something that you see on the shelves or goes into your vehicle. So our product development team actually interacts with customers quite frequently. I'm on a call just about every other day with the customer. Some of this is because we're co-developing things, when we're making adhesives and stuff, we're gluing together different parts, different materials for like in a battery pack or what have you. So they're always, especially the electric vehicle is a sort of ever-changing landscape. They always need different requirements from materials. So we have a call frequently with customers to discuss technical topics. So I guess from a customer service standpoint, it's not, it's more of just talking to another scientist. You do have to be careful about what you say, as is previously mentioned. And then I guess the biggest thing for my customer interactions is our product development teams are often called upon to present to potential new customers, to provide our sort of technical area of expertise and help answer questions. So that's always a sort of an interesting and something I actually have come to really enjoy, is you go in and you might be talking to a room of 20 people that all have a variety of different backgrounds, whether it's some technical, some sales. So you have to be ready to field those questions and also be able to present your products or your technical research or whatever it is in a manner that doesn't violate any NDAs or anything like that, but also gives people the information they need. So here in industry, we're always sort of towing the line of giving you enough information that you need, but no more than that.
Anita, you had a question?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Well, first of all, I want to say that I'm happy to see the both of you, and I'm so happy to hear that you're doing well at your respective positions. I guess my question is, what are your current titles? And I don't think you mentioned that yet. And if you could tell us a little bit about your day-to-day, and along the lines of that, can you give us a little bit of a breakdown, like percentage-wise, how much time do you spend in meetings, making presentations, writing, and lab, things like that?
Yeah, I can go. Hi, Anita, good to see you virtually. So when I first started in that rotational program, I was largely in the lab doing, like I said, it was more like academia, doing a lot of my own experiments, all the data analysis, all that kind of stuff. So I was probably in lab, at least half the day. Now that has changed significantly. I really only go into the lab when there's significant method development things that I need to do that I can't really have other people help with. Sort of requires my own thought process, or if I need to go tinker around, I'm not exactly sure how to explain it, right? So I'd say I'm in the lab maybe an hour-ish a day. The other, say, 2-3 hours in meetings. Largely I'm updating on different projects or meeting with the customers, as I said. Probably have 2 to 3 hours of meetings, and then the rest of that day is spent designing experiments, doing the data analysis, and doing the independent research stuff, all of the computer stuff that goes with research.
Yeah, mine is pretty similar. When I first started, it was a lot of meetings on like trying to meet different people, doing like safety things, which is like really big in industry. So that took like a month of just like doing practices and stuff. And then when I started getting into the lab, I would say I would come in around 8 a.m., start my reaction, and then I would end around noon to have lunch, and then finish up the reaction at 2 p.m. and then do some characterization and then leave by 3 or 4. So that's most of my days when I was starting off. But then now it's sometimes I wouldn't have time to be in lab, so I would probably run like 2 times a week, and then most of the other time would be meetings. Being involved with different organizations here at DAO, or even giving updates on my project, or just meeting with people to connect with. That's most of my day. It also depends on where your project is. So right now my project is further along, so I don't really need to do a lot of lab work. It's mostly just trying to give people samples. So I haven't been really running experiments for the most part, but it seems like it's picking up a little bit more. It's a lot more free time. I feel like I have like more time to do other things. It's not all revolving around research.
Right. And then Anita also asked about each of your current titles at your organizations.
Oh, right. I'm a senior research specialist, so usually that's the level that you can come into Dow as a PhD graduate.
I'm the equivalent of that at Henkel, where we call that a scientific associate here. So we have different scientific associate levels, I guess.
Awesome, thank you. What other questions do we have? So Jacob, you had mentioned before that you had a co-op during your undergrad, but did any of you have any of these experiences during graduate school? Or do you have any recommendations about whether to do it or not?
Yeah, so I actually, I grew up in Dow's backyard, basically, in Midland, Michigan, where they're headquartered. And so I went to university about 20 minutes from there. So all 4 years of my undergrad, I worked for Dow. And that was, I couldn't have asked for a better experience. It is what ultimately led me to go to graduate school. I saw what the PhD scientists at Dow did, and that was this job that I wanted. And I did have conversations about doing internships in grad school. I had that conversation with Kathy, my advisor. And I think that's just something you have to work out with your advisor and choose what's right for you. If it makes sense, I would absolutely recommend it. In my situation, I was sort of ready to try to get out of school. I felt like my resume and networking connections and everything was in a good enough spot to get the career that I wanted. And the internship, based on conversations I had with my advisor, was largely just going to sort of delay my graduation, because if you have a year's worth of research left to do and you're on an internship for 6 months, now you have sort of a year and 6 months left. So it didn't make sense for me. But if you are able to work that in, I would absolutely recommend it. My co-op I did in undergrad was super valuable, and I would always recommend somebody do that. But in graduate school, it kind of depends. You have to do what's best for you.
Do you have any thoughts about that?
Not really. I never did one, but yeah, definitely if you have the chance to do one, it can only help. Yeah.
And definitely talking to your advisor and figuring out a plan if you are thinking of doing one.
Yeah.
All right, so we have some other questions as well. What do you love most about what you do, and what keeps your career exciting day to day?
I guess for me, I really like my projects. I like the chemistry that goes into it. And I feel like I'm always curious, and I could always find some interest with different projects, and answering those questions and coming up with creative ways to solve problems keeps me going every day. And it's nice that you get paid for it too. So
Yeah, the compensation can definitely help make things a little easier. But I was fortunate enough to join a really great team here at Henkel. I work with a great group of people. And then I also get to work on some projects in the e-mobility space. So get to interact with customers, your people that make electric vehicles, and I get to go see their facilities and do some pretty cool things with that. It is also, the projects are sort of technically challenging, right? So I'm still able to sort of satisfy that itch, I guess, that I've always had of, sort of the intellectually challenging projects. And then, getting to interact with those customers, and where our business unit is one of the better growth business units. So our projects are a little more under the microscope from upper management, which can be good and bad. The good parts is it gets you a lot of visibility through the company. So I've got to meet a lot of different people through the company. And as you meet with upper level managers, they're always big on getting you excited. So they want to keep you working hard. So getting some of that visibility and interaction always helps when you're coming into work each day.
Awesome. So speaking of projects, Jacob, you mentioned when you initially joined Henkel, you were in a rotational program. And Ephraim, you can also talk about this, but when you initially joined the company, do you get assigned to certain projects? Do you get to choose projects? What does that kind of look like?
Yeah, so for me, the rotational program, I rotated through our 3 business units that are in Michigan. So they're both in our adhesive, they're all in our adhesive automotive business units. And then we have like one dedicated to OEMs, or your traditional, auto manufacturers. We have a metals component. We do a lot, like I think it's like 90% of all the aluminum beverage cans you have use a Henkel sealant. And then we also have our automotive components business, which is the one I'm currently in. So I rotated through all those, and I was assigned to the product development manager in each of those business units. And it was a little bit, I guess I had a little bit of freedom there. They would sort of outline some of the projects they had going on, or projects that they needed to get sort of off the ground started. And then it was, wherever I thought I might have the most expertise, or whatever interested me the most. So yeah, I mean, in a way, I was assigned to different projects, but I had a little say in like, I think I'd be much better at this one than an alternative.
Yeah, so I was assigned directly to the coding business, but Dow does have a rotational program that is called the RAP program. And at times we put our candidates into that program, and they're able to do a rotation in the different Dow site. Like for instance, I'm in Collegeville, Pennsylvania, but they could also do a rotation in Midland and in Texas, whether they would be in core R&D, which is more academic research environment, or being part of business like coding, plastics, polyurethanes. But when I entered Dow, I was directly put into DCM, not the solvent, but Dow coating materials. And when I entered the group, I was assigned a project, and I was basically paired up with a mentor who kind of mentored me throughout the whole process of, taking a project and developing it, and then making it good enough for customers.
Awesome. So another question that was in the chat was, do you think there are opportunities for growth, such as through promotions or other areas of the company? What does growth kind of look like in each of your roles?
Yeah, so absolutely. Here at Henkel, we actually break our performance evaluations down into 2 different parts. We have like a beginning end of year and then a mid-year one. The beginning end of year is basically you outline your goals that are sort of for your specific role, and then at the end of the year you see how well those are met. But the mid-year one is exactly what you're talking about. It's an open dialogue between you and your manager and other managers in terms of what you want to do, and also what the company sees you doing. If they see you being on a highly technical track, or if they think some of your skills are maybe more business oriented. So there's this open dialogue that is forced to happen through our performance evaluation to sort of outline what your, rather than what your role looks like, what your actual career path looks like, right? So that they definitely do provide those opportunities to grow, and if you communicate those well, they absolutely provide, you know, all the support you need if you want to transition business functions to help get you those skills and contacts that you need to make that happen.
Yeah, I totally agree that there's a lot of room for growth, especially you know, coming out of grad school. You could start in R&D, for instance, but then later on go into becoming a manager if you want, and you know, if you want to become a CEO, you could do that too. And you could also be in the marketing side, or we have like a team that is specifically customer facing, who just presents all our product lines basically. So depending on, you know, for instance, if you want to be like a people leader, be more on the technical side of things. So there's like choices as you move forward in your career in industry.
I will add to that too. I'm sure Dow's this way. I think just about every chemical company is. There's different career paths in terms of if you want to do a strictly technical career path. Henkel does offer that, where, you know, that one's largely based on, you know, how many products you develop, and, you know, the sales they lead to, how many patents you get, and, you know, how you start being recognized as an expert in the field, strictly technically speaking. So if you do want to always be associated with that, there is room for growth there as you sort of get more and more responsibilities added as you go up that technical path. But then there is, you know, other paths where you bounce around different functions and, you know, sort of move up your management level positions.
Awesome, thank you both. Another question that was kind of talking about the context of, you know, working on stuff that you specifically didn't work on during your PhD. So to what extent did you have resources and support versus independence and individual responsibility to learn what you needed for the job? So yeah, kind of speaking about the onboarding or training process, kind of transitioning out from the PhD.
Yeah, so to get up to speed in that, I would say, I mean, you join these companies and, you know, there's lots of, you know, PhD scientists around to help, and a lot of these companies are in areas they've been in doing research for decades, right? So that level of expertise is there for you to lean on. I know that was largely how I was brought up to speed, just through conversations and understanding, and then also going into lab and, you know, actually doing some of the things, seeing it with your own eyes rather than just through conversations and presentations. And then a fair amount of it was also challenged, you know, to me, to independent learning. They didn't want to just train somebody to be just like everybody else that's there, right? So they give you enough, but they're also, you know, hoping that you bring new, fresh ideas and, you know, think about the problems a little different way rather than just training you to think about it in the same way. So it was a little bit of both. But definitely was challenged, you know, to do some independent learning and get myself up to speed in some areas, but the expertise was there for me to lean on when I needed it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well. I think just talking to people and your mentors once you start and kind of picking their brain really helps a lot. Reading articles, you know, like Jacob said, with independent learning, that's still there. It doesn't leave you after grad school. And also Dow at least here at Dow, they allow you to take like workshops that, you know, offers you, like, for instance, my work is in emulsion polymerization, so they offer workshops about like certain topics, like this last summer I went to Atlanta to take a workshop there, and each year you could choose to take a workshop or attend a conference for career development. So some examples would be like, there's actually like my mentor right now went to two workshops when he was starting up. One was in New Hampshire for an emulsion polymerization class, and then the other one is in Spain. So that was nice. Hopefully I get to go to that next year because they usually send people there during their third year. And so by then I'll be in my third year. So I'll be bothering my manager for that.
Nice. What other questions do our participants have? No more questions? So I guess I could put one out there. What maybe can you tell us a little bit about what do you find most challenging in your roles? You talked about what makes you happy and what keeps you going, but tell us a little bit about some of the challenging stuff.
Yeah, I guess there's a few things that come to mind. I sort of mentioned it earlier, but when you get into industry, you generally are having technical conversations and trying to understand people's problems, and nobody wants to say anything of super importance. Under NDAs and everything, it can be a little difficult to get to what the root cause is and where you can most easily solve those problems. So a lot of times it's sort of guesswork in terms of what the actual root issue is. And then I would say the other sort of, in a way, technically challenging thing is in graduate school, what you're I don't know, in a way you have unlimited time to follow the most interesting path and to get to the absolute bottom of the fundamental research that's going on, where in industry you may be charged with, we need to fix this product, otherwise the customer's line is going to entirely shut down in 2 months. So you have 2 months to fix it, and you do everything you can in those 2 months, but you might have a sort of incomplete level of data set, if you will, I guess, where ideally in graduate school I'd keep working on that and have the absolute best solution for somebody. But now it's like, okay, based on what I have, here's what I would recommend. And it can be challenging at times, and you sort of have to have a lot of confidence in yourself and really make the most of the time that you have to design sort of a more efficient experimentation to get to the answers you need in a timely manner.
Yeah, so for me, as I mentioned before, safety is a huge thing in industry compared to graduate school. Like, for instance, waste in graduate school, like I had lab mates that was just throwing it wherever. But over here, it's a little bit more strict. And with that, with little things, little changes in the lab that you do, there's so much paperwork. There's so many hoops that you have to jump through. So I think that's the thing I dislike the most. And I find challenging because I can't just, like, for instance, like setting up a hood, like you need to ask permission with like 5 different people, and it just moves so much slower. But I feel like that's because I was used to it in graduate school, where like I have to be in a hurry, I gotta get out of here like in 5 years or whatever. So I can't wait for this. So I mean, now I'm kind of getting into the speed of industry. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely takes some time. And here in our kind of world, we say that It usually takes you about a year to just even get accustomed to an area or a business or a unit. So I'm sure you can also relate to that. Another question in the chat was, I think it's probably from a postdoc. Have postdoc experiences or people who've done postdocs had any negative impact to getting a position in industry? Do you know about that since you are both graduate students?
I can sort of comment on it. Yeah, I didn't do a postdoc. We recently hired somebody that did do a postdoc. I think it was the University of Toronto in Canada. But I would say there's no, I don't know, there's no real negatives to doing it in terms of industry. I think it sort of can only strengthen your resume in a way. When we're looking at candidates for a position, we definitely notice if somebody has done a postdoc. I would say it probably becomes especially more valuable if that postdoc was in the area of research, right? So if you can, as we said before, graduate school, we're really just looking for good scientists that show good problem solving skills and so on. And then if you have that plus some, say, further experience in the actual industry area, then I'd say that really strengthens it. But yeah, I guess I wouldn't anticipate there ever being a downside to it.
Yeah, I don't think there's really a downside to it either. I think if there is, it would be looking at your activity during your postdoc versus your graduate studies. I mean, you gotta show that you're still very productive as a postdoc, and you can't just like, I guess just let it ride during your postdoc, because they will ask that, like, what happened here or something like that. Like, that's fair game.
So yeah, no real downsides of having a postdoc, and it's absolutely possible to go into industry with a postdoc as well. Yeah. All right, so I guess a lot of our students are really concerned maybe or thinking about, transitioning. So what kinds of support were you provided when you transitioned from academia to industry? And additionally, what systems are still currently in place to support your career as a scientist? So speaking of professional development, which you also briefly touched upon earlier.
Yeah, I guess, we have like a formal mentorship program here. So when I was starting out, I had a mentor that we'd meet with, and we'd often, go out to lunch and kind of meet off site and talk about how things are going. I would say that was really the only designed support system, I guess, to help. Everything beyond that was sort of my own, getting involved with different, we call them ERGs, employee resource groups, which is, the equivalent of what we have in graduate school in terms of DCGSAC and SACNAS and all that kind of stuff. So getting involved with that here to kind of help some of that transition, it gives you a chance to meet people from all different areas of the company and that have been here for 2 months versus 20 years. So yeah, I guess the mentorship program they had was sort of the one formal way, and then beyond that, it was leaning on coworkers and everything to get myself up to speed and help with that transition from academia to industry.
Yeah, for us, we had mentors as well. So I had a technical mentor that mentored me with lab stuff, safety stuff, anything, like any questions I had, they answered. But also we have like the buddy program where you're partnered with a non-technical mentor with a person with a with a person that's been here a couple of years at Dow in a different business, and they kind of mentor you and give you the structure of Dow as a company and what type of, I guess, careers are possible as you're going through your career, and also, you know, like small question, like life questions, like where's the best place to get food at or whatever. So you would have like coffee lunches with that or lunches with them. So I felt like that was really helpful when I first entered. Um, yeah, and I feel like your manager also fosters that. Like that was a huge, I guess, transition too, because I had a very hands-off PI, so it was kind of funny when, you know, my manager was like, "Is there anything I could do for you to make your life easier?" And I'm like, "Wait, what?" So, um, yeah, I felt like the trend. Don't worry. I would say don't worry too much about the transition. I feel like um, they're hiring you because you're a good fit.
Awesome. Yeah, unlike graduate school, or in some cases, you do have more support and resources to help you and further support you. Awesome. That's great to hear. And then, so that was kind of more the transition piece, but talking about your professional development as well, how do you think each of your roles or each of your companies are helping you do that, or helping you get more professional development to further your careers?
Yeah, I think I feel as though I've been supported well. I've been allowed to, I took a coatings course through the University of Minnesota, attended a few different conferences and stuff. So from a technical standpoint, I guess I've gotten out there and been able to give presentations and things. And then also some of what I would like to do is non-technical related. So I have went through, we have a professional sales training course. So I went through that. And it was also helpful for me to understand what how our salespeople are trained to think and talk to new customers. So when I am supporting that from a technical side, I can kind of understand their goals in terms of, you know, trying to sell a product. So yeah, I feel as though I've been supported quite well in both just, you know, expanding my technical knowledge and actually getting myself out there to eventually become a sort of an expert in this area and be recognized for that when I and talking to other people, and then as well as some of those other skills that I'm interested in acquiring.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same for me. And I guess just to add to that, you know, like Jacob was saying, there's like ERGs that give you support within the site, and they hold events all the time to kind of, like, for instance, here at Dow, we have like a employee development day, and it's like a day where there's just seminars that is geared towards the new employees, and it's designed to give them the tools and, I guess, direction as well on how to navigate through a successful career at Dow. And also we have like career development plans that we have to submit to our managers yearly, so that they have an idea of like your interests. Like, you know, if one day I'm tired of synthesis, I want to do something new, your manager will be informed and cater to what you want to do next, whether that's a different part of R&D or management or being in sales. Yeah, they're pretty good at that.
Awesome, thank you. So one other question I guess I had in mind was thinking about publications, right? In your grad school, you have quite a bit of emphasis on publications, things like that. So is that even an emphasis in each of your current roles, or how do you sort of measure that success?
I would say that if you have no publication, then it doesn't look good. But I've also seen people that, I mean, including me, I didn't have a sole first author when I was applying to jobs. I was presenting to them like, oh, this is the paper that I'm going to have later on. But really, I think the important thing is during your interviews is to really showcase not only your productivity as a grad student and a postdoc, but also show that you have all these other skills like mentoring and being part of a team. I think that's highly valued in industry.
Yeah, so you talk more about publications while in grad school, but also at your current position at Dow.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So we have like our internal publication. So those are more like, it's not as, I guess, involved as academic publications. And that's part of it. But really, I think Jacob alluded to this a while ago. It's more like, what products have you developed? What volume was this product developed, and how much are you selling it in order to like move forward to your career? So I feel that publication in industry definitely takes more of a back seat, at least here at Dow.
Yeah, that's similar here. We're much more concerned with IP, so patents and the like. Papers occasionally, if you look at our technical career path, it's sort of twofold. There's a sales component. You need to generate products that actually make the company money. And then there is sort of that external component where patents, actual academic publications, and then giving technical presentations at conferences and stuff. All of that is sort of encompassed under one umbrella. So there's probably the occasional times that it would make sense for us to sort of submit a more traditional peer-reviewed journal article, but I would say that's few and far between.
I think I just wanted to add that it also depends on like what group you're in. Like for instance, if you're in core R&D here at Dow, you're going to be writing more and publishing more compared to if you're in a business. I think Jacob and I have like similar goals of patents and IP because we're both in a business.
Makes sense. Thank you. Any questions from our participants before we sort of start wrapping up? I guess one other question that you also kind of alluded to this before, but what percentage of time do you spend working individually versus collaborating with other people?
Yeah, I guess my individual time was largely my experimental design and doing some of the data analysis. That's sort of all on my own. Basically anything I do in the lab is usually a team effort of what we're doing in the lab. And then, different meetings and project updates are usually team efforts too. So I would anticipate, I don't know, that's maybe 25% of my stuff is, pretty independent, sort of all on me in terms of, designing experiments, doing analysis or making presentations. And then 75% is probably working at least with one other person.
Yeah, for me, so the project as a whole is like divided into different people. So for instance, I would synthesize the material and then I'm done. I give it off to the person to test it, and then the person to test it, reports back to me the data. And then after that, if we finally get a product, then we go to marketing and whatnot. So a lot of the synthesis part, for instance, I do myself, and project design and of course characterization. But then after that, I pass it on to the next one.
Right, so I'm understanding that you don't have to be part of a project from the beginning to the end, right? You do your part and can kind of delegate the next step of the process to someone else.
Right.
And that can sometimes be one of those challenging parts where in graduate school, it's sort of all on you. So there's, if anything falls through, you're the one that's responsible. Here, there's a lot of people at play that you're relying on a lot of other people at your company to help make the project successful.
Right. So as we kind of wrap up, for anyone who is starting to look into careers in the chemicals and materials industry, what advice do you have in terms of job application, the interview process? Yeah, tell us more about that.
Yes, my advice is it's not too early to start, and don't be shy as you reach out to people in industry. Don't be too afraid to make those connections. I guess one little tip is usually us people in industry, if you are able to bring somebody in that accepts the job, that's usually a referral, which benefits us as well. So if you're a little shy of reaching out, there actually is a benefit to the person you're reaching out to as well. Don't think it's just you trying to be the sole beneficiary of it. So yeah, I guess my advice is keep strengthening your resume, keep doing good work, keep illustrating your problem solving skills, and definitely start networking. And it's never too early to, start applying for whether it's jobs or internships, or at least start getting in touch with those companies and seeing what connections you can make.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this in the beginning, really get in touch early with the Career Center, because I feel like they have a lot of information and a lot of connections as well to kind of, let you network with, and also give you pointers on how to approach like something as simple as writing your resume. Like, you never know, like the little things like that will make a huge difference. And also the way you frame your answers when you're in the actual interview. I felt like Jennifer helped me a lot with that. Yeah, because I think that's like the most critical one. And anyway, like also showing that personality wise and like the way you present yourself is a good fit with whatever group you're trying to join is also important.
I talk to so many students, and a lot of students say that, I'm okay with the research presentation. I can talk all about the technical stuff, but I really need help with the behavioral piece of the interview. So even though you have so many skills and have so many accomplishments, you also need to sell yourself and sell your skills to a potential employer. So that in itself is a skill. So we want you to be successful in that. So that's why practicing early and coming to talk to us early is definitely helpful. So thank you for the thumbs up on that.
Yeah.
I
I
guess,
mean, oh, sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, even with the technical talk, I felt like, the careers that like you actually helped a lot on trying to put it together, because sometimes it could be too technical to the point where you like go over time or
Right.
like something like that. So I think really meeting with the career center is just to like polish everything super early would be like, oh, it would make such a big difference.
Exactly. And the other thing, Jacob, you mentioned a lot about networking and reaching out to people, which is also another reason why I encourage you to come see us, because we know these fabulous alums, we have their contact information. So if you're interested to talk to them, interested in reaching out, I'm sure both Jacob and Ephraim would be more than willing to talk to you and talk through anything that you need. All right, any final questions from our participants today? I guess not. So in that case, thank you both, Jacob and Ephraim, so much for your time. Really appreciate this conversation, helping our current students to also understand what the process looks like and what resources and support that they have available if they're thinking about transitioning to industry. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It was nice to talk to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Jennifer. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Would it be okay if students reached out to you either through LinkedIn or connected with you through email?
Yeah,
I'm fine with either of those. You'll find me on LinkedIn. I'm not super active on there posting, but I do always respond to messages and stuff when I get those. I enjoy seeing those.
yeah, same. Just message me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much and have a great rest of your Monday.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you, you too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.